This computer. Hello and welcome to the first ever HD chats with myself, 𝗂𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and kellymyszkowski. Kelly is an Sync with Your Soul coach and guide, helping people to connect with their purpose and align with their true soul's energy. And she is the founder of Inner Light Transformational Coaching. I'm Jess, I'm a projector embodiment coach and a message mastery consultant. So how did this come about? Today we are coming in to talk about conditioning, and the central question, is there any benefits to conditioning? And what is definition? What is openness? And how do we navigate life, understanding these portals, these energy centers? This conversation came about because last week, Kelly and I decided to get on a Zoom call and we had such a wonderful conversation. I had a brainwave and said, hey, we should be streaming this into the group. It would be so useful for other people to hear. So we came up with this session. It's unstructured. We just want to talk about things we're excited about. If you have any questions, I'm not probably going to be able to see them, but we'll come back to them later. We'll come back and comment after the live if we can't see them during the live. Kelly is also a 4-1 emotional projector, which is super rare, which is a brilliant opportunity for anyone who knows a 4-1 or who is a 4-1, because there aren't that many 4-1s, are there?
No. Not at all. I'm like 1% of the 1%.
Crazy.
Yes.
And am I wrong in saying the 4-1 is the fixed life theme?
No, you're correct.
Okay.
You're correct.
That is interesting, actually, because that popped into my mind the other day when we were talking about just your own journey, your journey in entrepreneurship, the downloads that you've been brought to bring through, and like your connection with craniosacral therapy and how you want to integrate it into your work. It made me think about the fixed life theme. It just popped up in the middle of the night, and I was like, oh, it's to do with that, perhaps. The sort of I wouldn't call it a frustration, but like this very rigid journey that has to unfold on its own way. There's no controlling it, almost.
Right. Yeah. There's the deeper I dig into my design, and the more I get to know myself, and the more that I look at the business that I've created, it's like it's all coincidence and it's no coincidence at the same time. It would not be any other way. And it's been interesting. There's so many similarities, so many parallels, so many. Yeah, that's exactly what it is and what it must be. It could not be anything else. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that, I know this isn't the central focus of our today's talk, but it doesn't really matter. I think this is so important for projectors to really grasp that we get a lot of conditioning. Actually, we get a lot of messaging about manifesting and co-creation and creating our reality. And for me, I have this very strong tension as well between this ability to, yes, I can control, I can control my vibration. I can control my mindset and my thought patterns, but can I really control what I co-create and what I attract in the way that others do? I don't think it's the same. The way we do it as projectors is very, very different. And also, I do believe we are when we are aligning with our projector story and our energy frequency, we are actually following a destined path.
I would agree with that too, Justin. I guess it's hard for me to imagine it any other way because that's what I've lived as well. And it feels very limiting. That's been my experience. It's been very limiting. There are more aspects of my design that are even deeper in that, when we get to my motivation, for example, I'm here to observe with wonder and curiosity, which is very different from having desires and pursuing them. And I believe I'm being guided. I believe that there is something that I, want. So it's kind of a desire in a sense, but it's a desire that has resources and energy bringing it to me. And that's very different from sit down and let yourself dream. And if you dream it, it can be. Well, it probably could, but I would probably burn out in the process. And it's, you know, there's so much potential in this conversation right now, to go in so many directions. But before we do get further in, I just wanted to mention for those that may be watching this and were expecting to see Denise as well, that she had to bow out at the last minute. So that's why it's you and I today. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yes, I'm genuinely so sad because I love Denise. I love her insights and I just love her energy. And she actually always activates me. So I was like, oh no, but it's okay. Divine timing.
Divine timing, yes.
And things are always working out for the highest good, you know, it's things always unfold as they should. But you said something interesting a minute ago. Oh, about motivation and variables. And mine is, I'm an observer perspective, but need thing. So I, again, have experienced that. I always have my needs met. I know that my needs are always going to be met. So from my story that you know of having, and being guided, connecting with my higher self, knowing that I'm connecting with angelic beings or entities, you know, and having that strong sense of being guided, and the magnetic monopole, like, is it that, you know, it's all these different possibilities. Being able to surrender and truly understand that my needs are always met, and having lived that experience for 3 years or now 4, it gives you that other layer of being able to really just let go and live your life as yourself, in the flow. And not trying to, and that's another thing of not trying to be something you're not. Mine is, my needs will always be met, you know, unless I get into that transference of the fear. But, and this brings me into this thing about awareness. So I think we'll give some context about definition in a minute, but I want to say, I think one of the key things that I found is that our awareness is what gives us the power. So when we as a projector develop that ability to observe the conditioning or the influencing forces, you become very, very powerful. Your openness becomes your power. The way you work with others becomes, that's, I think, the point of power for a projector. How do you feel?
I think that's a good way of looking at it. And, you know, I've been in a big learning mode and deconditioning mode myself over the last 1.5 years or so, really kind of leaning into all of this. And the more, to me, the more self-aware we are, ultimately, the easier it can become, because things are going to pop up for our awareness, for our learning, for our growth, that can challenge us and bring our awareness and our attention to what we need to see or know, which may be difficult at the time. And this isn't about always being, you know, rainbows and roses and unicorns, for sure. But there's a different degree of joy and happiness and ease that comes with the awareness of who we are and who we are not, and what's available to us, and waiting for us and calling for us and anticipating us and welcoming us and supporting us and resourcing us, and what isn't. And, you know, I think this is part of what I help my clients discern too. When is the struggle a sign that you're on the wrong path? And when is it inherent in who you're here to be and the lessons you're here to learn? And, you know, when is a no fear-based from conditioning? And when is it true guidance that this is not the most aligned, most supported, most resourced path for you? And that, to me, is key. Part of, you know, what happened, to go a little deeper into this, my path's been very different from yours. Is the potential for blaming some of the obstacles that I experienced on limiting beliefs. And I did that even to myself. Well, there must be something in that. There must be something in that. And let's look deeper. And that doesn't mean there isn't something there. But after a while, there's a certain amount that is inherent in our design that I think is always going to inform and flavor our experience. But there's a different quality to it when you go, oh, there it is again, versus it truly limiting you, because when it's there, it kind of forms the base on which more experiences layer themselves. So we decondition to the point that we're back to what's inherent in our design, but it doesn't have to limit us, and then we've done the work that we're here to do. And that's where awareness comes in. And so when I got to know my design, it answered a lot of questions. It explained a lot of the struggles that I'd had. It explained how all of the coaching that I'd received, like, I just couldn't get behind it. I would lose the enthusiasm, lose the energy, and then again, there's layers to this conversation. Sticking to today's topic with definition and conditioning, we can just stick to that for today.
So talking of that then, have you got a defined will center or an undefined will center? It's
undefined.
Me too.
Will center.
Right. And so that's a really great point that you brought up, this idea that can conditioning be, are there any benefits to it? So if we're looking like the undefined will center, I also have it. This idea that we need to make promises and stick to goals and be consistent, it's really, really damaging. But when you're with a coach who has that definition in their aura, you can go into it going, yeah, I can do that. I'm going to set these targets. I'm going to do this thing. And then you get out of it and you're like, yeah, I'm not interested. Because you haven't entered it correctly and you've absorbed it without the awareness. So,
exactly.
I think you raised a super important point about why it's important to work with projectors as a projector. Not, do you know what I mean? Or even understand who you're working with and like what you're getting from it.
And I think that is probably the best way that I would say to state it if I were to make or have an opinion. Know who you're working with and understand the dynamics of that relationship. And because you can then be called, uncoachable, or, really beat yourself up. Like, I don't get it. I'm inconsistent. I don't follow through. What's wrong with me? And, you can get labeled lazy and all of that stuff, even doing it to yourself, not necessarily by other people, but the potential is there. And it's interesting because for me, that's probably the most notable undefined center that I have, the most important, the most critical. What promises am I making?
Yes.
And can I follow through? And there are benefits to being in that conditioning field when you're in an environment where there is support and resources that is maybe contained.
Yeah.
Like, say, within a work environment, when you're working with colleagues, and there's no expectation when you're off on your own that you carry that on. But within the work environment, what is the culture that's created in a traditional work environment? Or any sort of team effort, where there's a cooperative effort, happening. It could be a volunteer program that's happening, or a project or something like that as well.
Yeah.
So knowing, and again, that's awareness. Who are you dealing with? What are the dynamics? What is happening? Don't beat yourself up when you leave. If your enthusiasm wanes, and then you're back with these people and you're in that environment, and is it necessarily a bad thing?
Yeah.
To me, it's not. If it's not dragging you down, it's not disserving the whole or yourself or any one person. and it's serving the greater good in some way.
Well, this is why it comes back to this core of keyword awareness. So if you're going into it and you're consciously borrowing that energy to get a project done, but you're aware that you know you need to discharge energy, you need to do your personal practices and take time to rest in between when you feel tired, when you're going into those things consciously, then what's the problem? You're borrowing it for a purpose and an outcome. I just want to say before we go further, so for some people in the group, they're really new to human design. So defined centers are where we have consistent energy and where it's really a superpower for us when we know it. So if you have a defined will center, which I do, it's colored in, you are here, you have a strong sense of direction, you can guide other people, all of these things. I have a defined spleen. My intuition is strong. I'm able to just release things, move forward quickly. If yours is undefined, you might hold on to things, but you're able to notice illness in others or sense things, really quickly. So there's ways of understanding the power of our undefined centers. So anyway, explanation, definition, colored in bits in the chart, and they are broadcasting to other people and conditioning them when we're around them, and they're consistent within us. Where we have our open centers, that's how we sample other people's energy. So when we look at it from the position of having conscious awareness, which is why learning to know yourself is so important, you can then begin to go, oh, that's really powerful and useful. I'm sensing this emotion in this person. So if you're working with clients, having that open emotional solar plexus stops becoming this overwhelming empath problem and starts to become a source of power for you and ability to tune into the other and understand what's going on. And also stop identifying with things that don't belong to you. So you stop becoming this person who's like, oh no, I'm overwhelmed with the world, and you start walking out in power. So is there anything to add on to that?
I love it. There's nothing immediately that's popping. I think you said it very well. There's pros and cons to it, and awareness is key. Awareness. I have an example that keeps coming back to me, if you'd like me to share that. It was a group experience. I went to a conference that was free, and the conference sponsors, if you will, were very well known. And it was around money issues and beliefs and manifesting and all of that. And I literally, within the context of this, it was like 3 days or something, conference, was observing how they were creating hype.
Right.
And it had nothing to do with human design. This was before I knew about human design. But I was like, this is such a load of crap. Because when I leave here, I'm not going to have this enthusiasm anymore. It's all out the door. It's going to get and I didn't realize what was happening. I was like, this was just brilliant. Because there was all this enthusiasm and energy conditioning everyone. So either they had it and it was getting magnified even more, as in terms of being defined in them, or those of us that were having issues, it was getting magnified, and conditioned into, oh, everything's going to be fine and everything's great and I can this and I'm powerful. And I was like, it was just really interesting that I observed that. And I think that was my projector self.
Yes.
Realizing I'm in a group environment where there was some sales involved. And it's one of those things where you could commit and walk out the door and what the hell did I do when you get home? And it's not the correct thing for you. So I feel I've known myself pretty well most of my life, at least in the section of my life where you want self-awareness from that point of adolescence forward, where you're starting to tune into yourself and how you relate to the world in a different way. So I was fortunate from that standpoint. But I also love what you mentioned earlier about having a projector in your life to help guide you, and thinking that typically projectors have fewer centers defined, typically, not always. So
Mm.
there's less conditioning from them. And I didn't think about that until you said that, that is going to potentially influence you. It's more likely going to go the other way, unless you're a projector yourself. But ideally, we're here to help the generators and manifesting generators make
Yes.
correct use of their energy in
Yeah.
the world, correct for them and for the whole.
Yeah.
And it's not about necessarily telling someone what to do, as it may sound when you first hear that, but it's helping them to know themselves and make good decisions for themselves and for the whole as well. And that's really what you and I do, each in our own ways.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that you mentioned that, because my vision, like this download came to me this year, and it's something that I'm very, I know it's something I'm here to deliver. I really want to create a community to connect. Oh, I've just got my higher self, tremor of truth there again. Connect generators and projectors, awaken. I don't want to call it awaken, but aware, because the world will change when we actually build this conscious relationship so that we can actually create things together, and use our energy in the right way. So yeah, I'm really excited about being able to do that at some point later, maybe 2023 or 2024. We'll see how it's already begun. Like I've noticed things happening and keep opportunities coming for it to, but I haven't jumped in yet. I want to talk about personal experience around, another tremor of truth, my higher self though. I want to talk about sacral conditioning when we lack awareness. So my whole life, I was on stimulants. I was taking cocaine to do my work, like to study. Like when I did my degree, anytime I was a musician, a jazz singer as well, and it wasn't about sex, drugs and rock and roll. It was literally because I had to stay up, and I didn't know that is why I was doing it. Later on, I was working as a teacher and having to do 70-hour weeks, and there was other conditioning involved, having to prove myself, obviously being a one-line profile, this obsession, because I was so passionate about the study I was in, and I've got 54, there's a lot. My whole chart, if you look at the synthesis of the chart, I look back at my workaholic self, and I see that some of it was external conditioning and some of it was just my actual joy of what I was doing. But I ended up being diagnosed with ADHD at 30 something, and I took Adderall for 5 years before I burnt out. And it was brilliant because my open head, I had a defined throat, I could speak like a silver snake, like everything was clear, my whole mind was clear, everything was just, I didn't forget anything, I didn't have to worry, I was just on fire. And I was working 70 hours a week, and it was only when I had my spontaneous spiritual awakening, or projector, what I now call the spontaneous projector awakening. Before human design, I called it Kundalini, but now I realized, to me, it was just me awakening to my projector self. And I immediately, I got rid of the Adderall, everything just got let go. And I went to the jungle, I traveled the world for that year, and I was in my own aura. And I immediately realized that I no longer had ADHD. Like when I developed my, when I cleared all of my filters and I developed this strong neutral observer, and I started to do my shadow work and my self-awareness work naturally, I realized that, number one, I didn't experience like this monkey mind anymore. So my thoughts were very slow. My brain is like, do you know what I mean? It's like spacious. So these ADHD like mindset patterns, I wasn't in the environment where this was affecting me anymore, So looking then at like gate 9 and the gate 35 and the sensing circuit, it's all can be used, misconstrued as ADHD circuits. But also I realized I grew up with a generator in the house. So where people kept saying I was hyperactive, it wasn't that. So I think that's something to be aware of for the projectors in the group who may experience ADHD symptoms, and B, might have children where you have generators in the house. It's really about teaching them to spend time discharging energy. And as soon as, sorry, and the reason I mentioned all of this was because as soon as I spent that year truly deconditioned, being in nature, living in my own essence, I didn't have any guilt or shame around this idea of needing to work, needing to produce. And yeah, I think the key point I was trying to make is lost, but do you see what I'm saying?
I don't think you lost the key point. I think you just came to it. You know, there's so much that can happen that can affect how we're responding that we're not aware of. And even though we're self-aware, like you might have known what was going on in your head and how monkey mind it felt, but not realize where it's coming from. So you have that awareness. So awareness is the first step, but then we need to go to the next layer of awareness and question what is creating this for us? How much of it is in, I call it the cosmos and human design, you know, the transits and the environment as well, and the people around us. And, you know, there's so much more that's influencing us than what we necessarily literally see, that we may sense on another level. And ADHD is one of those things that comes up in a lot of my conversations that ultimately are about human design. You know, when we don't know what's causing it, and I think, you know, in the medical community, there's a fixation on looking at the anatomy, and well, we just don't know because we don't see it. So, but we know this works. Well, what's actually happening on an energetic level?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of aspects of someone's chart that can lead them to exhibit what we would call symptoms of ADHD. And it's not like you can look at a chart and say, well, there's the ADHD right there. But when you know someone's exhibiting symptoms and you look at their whole chart and what are the circumstances, it's the synthesis of the whole that many times would be like, well, no kidding. And I think that's true with a lot of what's happening with the way our children are coming into the world now. And things are changing and humans are changing and evolving. You know, how are we expressing? And we're here to be different and create a difference. And when we don't fit the norm, then there's something wrong. And how do we make it fit the norm the best possible, instead of saying maybe it's time for a new normal? And so, yeah, you know, there's more conditioning there. There's more, again, conditioning in the sense that it can potentially be limiting or shaming. And I think that's how we kind of came to deciding to have this conversation today, because we don't want to be limited. And so freeing our energy up to create greater for ourselves and for the whole is huge. So there's the one aspect of let's free ourselves up so that we are freer to be and to explore and to be wise in those areas where we're here to gain wisdom. And we're going to gain wisdom about all aspects of the binary, the duality, the polarity, the gifts and the shadows in a particular type of quality or trait or experience or whatever you want to call it. But then also, how can we use that to our benefit and to the benefit of the good and the whole and all that is, and have someone be able to be their best self and learn what they're here to learn and contribute what they're here to contribute consistently, and not to their detriment or the detriment of the whole, not blow smoke up their ass while they're around you and have them go home and fail and fall into a hole when they're not around you. That doesn't serve. So again, you know, where there's a team effort and what are the dynamics of the team and how does everyone fit in and how can that team do good in the world? And then everyone goes their separate ways when we're not working together and we're not in each other's aura and presence. and still be healthy and happy and joyous and come back to that, whatever it is, whether it's the family, it's a friendship, it's a primary relationship, it's a work relationship, it's a project, it's the community as a whole.
Yes.
The conditioning can be good when it's of the highest expression and it's not creating a demand for sustained expression that we can't.
You've hit the nail on the head.
We can't support.
And that's so there, what we're talking about really is truly understanding and accepting people for who they are and understanding how people work at their most highest expression so that we can make things work together. That's the whole idea about the generator projector collaboration or cooperative alliance, that we will guide the energy, make it work, and people that will accept. There was something that you mentioned that, I wanted to talk about this. So even though we don't have sacral energy, it's not that we don't have energy. I want to mention here the importance of really recognizing how we get activated or ignited when we've been invited. So I can work super hard. I don't want to use the word hard. I can work intensely on a product or a workshop when I've been invited and rewarded, but also recognized for my talent, or whatever it is. It fuels me. So this thing about, so it's like learning to accept and not have guilt, or like I have days where I do nothing. My mum's laughing at me the other day. She was like, I said, I'm having a day off today. She said, every day this week you've had a day off. And I'm like, yeah, because I know that when I get that energy to start the thing again, bang, it's going to flow out in less time than it would take me if I started to keep forcing, I've got to do it. I have to do it. And so it's again, this thing that you're talking about, understanding how our energy works and loving ourselves and letting ourselves just be with it. Everything gets done. What's that phrase from the 𝗏𝗏 the Tao, where it's like doing nothing, everything gets done, or something like that. Okay,
I'm not familiar with it. If you said it exactly, you knew it might ring a bell, but it's not ringing right now. I believe you.
Doing, not doing, or something like that. Yeah. Wow, woo way woo. I can't remember what it's called.
Woo woo something. Who knows? And I love that, because there is so much pressure in the world to do. I've got to be doing something. I've always got to be doing something. And there are people that are built to feel that. They're going to feel that because of how they're designed. So sometimes they need to busy themselves with busy work to burn that energy until the correct project or use of that energy comes along in a more constructive nature, more constructive way. And that's okay.
Yeah.
For them.
Yeah.
But it's important to know, is this an outside influence? Is it some sort of inspiration that I am meant to follow? And what I think happens, I see it from an energetic perspective. When we're recognized and invited, we are being nurtured in the highest way. It's like that baby that everyone is loving on and cooing over and whatnot. You want to make sure its needs are met. You want to make sure it has food. You want to make sure it's clean. You want to make sure it's comfy. So it's supported and nurtured. And that's what's happening, I feel, to us when we're recognized and then we're invited. It's like, yes, I want to babysit you. Yes, I want your help. So there's no resistance there.
Yeah.
There's less resistance and there is support and resources.
Yes.
So our energy is more efficiently used and supported what limited energy we do have, and we're able to go. And then it depends on our individual design and our state of health. And, we burned ourselves out getting to that point anyway. Or are we healthy and rested and ready to go? Is our diet what it should be? Are we healthy otherwise? And then, of course, different projectors have different types of energy. And I have a defined root and solar plexus. So those are considered motor centers in human design. So there's some energy there, but that doesn't mean I'm the Energizer rabbit.
Right, and I want to talk to you about that because it's really interesting. Because my mum's a 5/1 projector. She is not into, she's not really into human design. She listens to what I say, but she's deeply, deeply stuck in the world of the super slave ultimately. Like where I used to be, I was a super slave. Like there's no doubt about it. I
Yeah.
was totally a super slave. Like I was like, whoa, when I read about it. But so my mum is a super slave. Like even like when I say it's her body is telling her, I want to go to bed, but her mind is chatting. She doesn't want to go to bed. Oh, I don't want to go to bed at 4 o'clock. You know, I don't want to go to bed in the evening, or so it's all this internal conflict, and that is conditioning. And I'm like, your design, just follow your body. But anyway, the point is, she's got a defined will center and a defined root. Someone else in the group the other day, oh, there's a fly. Somebody else in the group mentioned that she was struggling to rest, or to find herself to be able to rest. Now, what would you advise? Have you mastered your definition and your root, basically, is what I'm saying.
I'm there pretty well, and I part of it, I think, is we're still living in a world that hasn't gotten the memo yet. Not everybody understands this, and not everybody's tuned into themselves. So we're still, depending on our individual situations, there's a greater or lesser degree of other dynamics that we're trying to work around. So I'm pretty good at listening to my body and napping when I need to nap. And there's certain days where you have deadlines that you're trying to meet, or if you're a parent and your baby's screaming and needs to be fed, you don't just say, well, I'm going to take a nap, I'll get to you later. So there's that stuff. But again, it's awareness. What is going on for you? And is there something, an adrenal imbalance, a biological imbalance that has you pushing through? You're on that adrenaline, even though you're exhausted, you still feel that drive. And it's having the faith and trust that all of what we're talking about, and I did a post on LinkedIn the other day about this too, intuition is science. People think it's this woo-woo bullshit, reserved for the special few weirdos out there. No, not the way that I look at it.
Yeah.
Because we blink our eyes when we need to. We don't go, okay, blink, blink, blink. You don't, okay? You just left. Like it was a reaction.
Right?
Our hearts beat, we breathe. All of this is connected to something that's happening automatically and autonomically in our inner senses that I call our intuition, are all part of that same mechanism. And it's based on a greater wisdom than what's in our human brains, what's in our logical, conditioned, learned, trained, educated minds. There's a whole out there that we're a part of. And if we can align with it, and that's why I call it sync with your soul, that part of you that is the higher wisdom that has the bigger picture, that is trying to get your attention, that says, sweetheart, sit your ass down and rest.
Yes.
Take a nap.
Yeah.
Take a powder. I'm working on something. I need you to rest and get out of the way right now. Well, this goes on over here, and we get it perfect. And when it's time for you, we'll wake you up and let you know.
Right. But that's the thing, of making the mind and the master to the soul, rather than being the driver, the driver's seat. And that was the biggest thing I learned. This is why I was called to projector embodiment guiding, because I did it naturally. And then because my left awareness and my left brain thinking, I analyzed. I'm metacognitive. My teaching practice when I was a teacher, anything I do has always been, what are the thinking steps? What are the actual processes that I went through? So I'm able to go back and look at it metacognitively, to go, oh, it was when I developed the neutral observer. It's when I started to develop a strong witness in my mind. It was when I started to separate the voices, and it's when I did that, this cleared this. So it was like understanding the process, but so it's about the surrendering that mind, because as I said, my mind just like now it's really slow, not in a bad way, just like I'm not pressured. I very rarely feel the pressure, and if I do, I develop the awareness of it. Or if I'm feeling restless, I can tune in and go, well, where's that coming from? But I want to talk about something that you mentioned, because I find it very funny. I'm an open root, my mum's a defined root. I'm getting to observe, because that's my thing as well. I'm an observe a viewpoint perspective. Getting to live with her for this short period of time, to observe her as a 5-1 with her centers and what's going on, and me. This is something really funny that happened the other day. My brother was coming with his wife and his baby. Both Manny Gen, he's a Manny Gen, the baby's a Manny Gen, the wife's a manifester. My office is the spare bedroom for the family to come, for them all to stay in. So she came into my room. She was like, Jess, can you tidy up the office? Can you make the bed? Can you strip the bed and make the bed in the office? And I said, I'm lying there. I'm like, yeah, I will. And she's like, and I'm like, and I said, when are they coming? 3 weeks time. And I just started crying with laughter. I said, that's your open route. I said, I'll do it. I said, I've got enough time. So it's the thing of this person, but I don't get conditioned by it now. There used to be a pressure of get up, get it done, just to get it out of the way. But I'm just like, nah, I'll do it when I'm ready.
Yeah. It's all those little dynamics, and it's so intricate and complicated, and yet so simple all at the same time. You know, what happens to us, and how do we see things, and yeah, that is, I love that story.
Give you another example, like even like you probably have this in New York. I was a Londoner, so I was raised in London all my life. So in London, we have the London Walk. It means like you just walk super fast, like you're marching, march. Now, I only observed when I was in Costa Rica and Thailand and all this jungle lifestyle, I realized that I had lost that. I sauntered, I walked slowly, I smelt the roses. I'm super slow, and that like very, very slow, basically. And I went away, 2 friends, generator friend, and my mum, she came with us, a last minute thing. We went to Sevilla, Spain, in September. And my mum, you know, like in the airport where you have the escalator, but it's not going down, it's just straight, right? So me and Fergs, we're just standing there leisurely, it's all good. My mum is marching, and she's marching again. And I'm like, look at the conditioning in that. It's super funny. And she's like, where are you going? She cannot relax. But then it could be the motors, the wheel center, and the definition in the root.
It could be. It could be. And it, you know, I'm 4.5 hours from the city, and have not spent a lot of time there, but can relate to what you're talking about. Just in, you know, some idea I have in my head, and from what little I visited down there, you know, kind of stereotyping. And definitely here in upstate, it's a whole different thing, and people walk different anyway that are farmers, because they're hurting. And not everybody's a farmer up here, especially not anymore. But yeah, it's amazing that the the environment makes a big difference.
So I don't think we've got any comments. Oh, we've got Octavia. Good morning. I don't know if she's still here. I can't see. Good
morning.
I've got to work a little bit, but she'll hang out till then. Amelia, yes. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Beautiful. That's that.
Yes.
Nice.
I love that.
So I think we're going to wrap up. If there's anyone who watches this on the replay, just put #replay and post your questions. Me and Kelly are here to answer your questions, make connections. So my motto is connect, collaborate, create, purpose, prosperity. I can't remember the third P, but anyway, partnership. So this is what this space is about. I want us to all be connecting. You know, who knows where things could lead. Invite people into your containers. We guest speakers. Projectors need projectors. We also need generators so that we can collaborate and build these cooperative alliances so that we can support each other and get in front of other people's audiences, because we all have people on our fractal that we're here to serve. There's no competition, you know?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And just when you mentioned that collaboration, one last thought that was coming to mind. Again, this doesn't have so much to do with our topic of conditioning being beneficial or being a negative thing, but it does indirectly. I know that sometimes there's friction between projectors and generators. And I believe that part of that friction comes from not understanding who we are and how to be in relationship correctly.
Yes.
In addition to, is the relationship correct for each of us? So when we're here and working in, from our authentic selves and the highest expression in our gifts, both of us, generators as well as projectors, then there's a greater likelihood of flow, beneficial conditioning, deconditioning of that which does not serve us and is limiting us. And the world will be a better place for it. So I can't wait to see what you create, Jess.
Yeah, thank you. And it gives me so much joy, because I have to say, now you've mentioned that as well, I've got to look, because I look back in retrospective. It's like I look back and I observe situations, which is what helped me to understand how things had shifted, what had been going on in the past, and let go. So much forgiveness. I was able to understand situations and yeah, my higher self did that as well. It's so freeing and liberating to look back in through the lens of human design and really be able to understand the dynamic in certain situations, even certain things. Now I know there's like racism, and I know there is sexism and stuff like that, but I used to think it was all about that, certain situations, and it was. But now I'm like, no, this was an energetic thing going on for projector generator. But that's not what I want to talk about. I've had so many beautiful, thankfully, I've had so many beautiful relationships with generators before human design, where it's been in perfect flow and harmony, where it's actually worked the right way. I've had really terrible experiences where it hasn't. But yeah, and I think that's, like your life, those pivotal moments and those experiences all part of the guiding you into why something's so important, because I know the beauty and the flow of a generator projector relationship that is harmonic. It's just fantastic. What can be created. Yeah, definitely.
Waiting for the invitation as a projector, running it through your particular authority to make sure that it's the correct invitation for you. And as the generators living in response to life and checking with your sacral authority, do you have the energy for it? Is it correct for you? If you have that emotional authority, secondary, waiting through your emotional wave for emotional clarity to know if you're supposed to follow through or not. And it does get a little more complex when the spleen's involved, but yeah, anyway, then it works. Yay.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming, sharing your wisdom and your thoughts and perspectives, giving us your time. We're so grateful, and there'll be many more to come. We've already got one on intuition that we really want to dive into, so we don't know when that will be. We might be maybe space it out and maybe do it once a month, but we'll go with the flow. So I'm going to just sign off now. Anybody who is watching on the replay, comments in the group. If you're on YouTube and you're watching this, come and join the Projector Success Hub, and we're sending you love and blessings. Just going to stop recording. We'll stay on the thing. Okay, so how do I do that? What do I do? Stop.